Hi guys, welcome to my third video. In this video I want to address something that I've been meaning to address for a while, and that is Stephen Hawking's opinion on alien contact not being a wise idea. He had a number of things he said throughout his interview, and I want to address what he said, and even though I really respect him and I'm not trying to be negative, I don't agree with him, and I'd like to outline the reasons why. In trying to work out what aliens might actually be like, he said, and I quote, "We only have to look at ourselves to see how intelligent life might develop into something we wouldn't want to meet." He imagines that they might exist in massive ships, having used up all their resources from their home planet. Such advanced aliens would perhaps become nomads, looking to conquer and colonize whatever planets that they can reach. So Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest minds of our time, imagines that aliens are in massive ships going around looking for resources around the universe. They're so intelligent and so advanced that they've created these mega vessels and they're looking for resources. Does this sound familiar? To me, it's like maybe he watched Independence Day and drew a conclusion from that movie. It sounds a little bit too Hollywood, and anything that sounds too Hollywood is probably fictitious by nature also. Now, what I really want to address regarding what he said is this. He refers to another possibility, that the intelligent life out there might have been overlooked. But if we pick up signals of civilizations, he warns, and this is important. He says this, and I quote, "We should be very wary of answering back until we have evolved a bit further. Meeting a more advanced civilization at our present stage might be like the original inhabitants of America meeting Columbus." That's what he suggests. Anyway. Stephen Hawking has drawn a comparison basically to Columbus arriving in South America and killing everybody and taking the land and taking their resources, to what an advanced civilization of extraterrestrials might see and do to us the exact same. That to me is very naive, and it doesn't make sense. And as Judge Judy always says, if it doesn't make sense, then it's probably not true. Now, if you consider this for a few moments, when Columbus arrived in the Americas, which is only a few hundred years ago, and did what he did, that was part and parcel of the way all of humanity was acting at that moment in time. It was a bit reckless. But recently, only a few hundred years later, not thousands of years later, not while we have spaceships, not millions of years later, not while we're living in star systems that we've created, but only a few hundred years later, we have found civilizations in Peru. We've found civilizations in a number of places in the world that are untouched. And what has humanity done but decided to try to red tape these areas off and do completely the opposite with just a few hundred years of evolution? A little bit more civilized we've become, and we've already started to use a prime directive as such. So imagine us in 1,000 years or in the million years time. Do you really think that it's likely, considering our strategy now towards these types of people, that we will go to another planet and try and rape it of its resources or try to enslave them? We're doing the opposite now already. So his theory it makes sense. If this was the time of Columbus, then you might buy it. You might say, okay, well, that's fair enough, we've just done that. But we're doing the opposite, and we're not developed to the way that other civilizations that would be so advanced would be. Secondly, this idea that any other civilization would even hold resources, certain ones certainly, to the same value as we do, is probably not likely. Then also, I don't think there's any debate over this. If you can create a star vessel that he compared to a massive ship that they travel in millions on, you can do a lot more than that. You can take resources from anywhere. You don't have to come to Earth to take water. There's water on asteroids. There's water all over space. I have a theory that there's water even in the emptiness of space. Space-time fabric itself, which if anybody knows anything about the way things work, there is a fabric. It's called space-time fabric, which the sun literally sits in, and as a result, it weighs it down and everything moves around it. I believe they're going to find water in space-time fabric. They're going to find that the fabric literally is a fabric, that it's like a damp cloth that one day we'll be able to squeeze and literally drip water from. And you might say, but there's nothing there. Well, every time an asteroid flies by, every time you see that fume coming out of the back of it, that's water vapor, that's ice melting, or it's so many other things. There is stuff being left in space, there is water in space, and whether it be in the very essence of fabric of space, it's still going to be found in space because we can see it happening ourselves. So there's so many questions about that's a little off the topic, but my point is resources are everywhere. Nobody has to come here for resources. Another thing most people seem to argue is that they wouldn't want to come here because we're violent by nature and we disgust them. Well, no, you might disgust yourself, but any advanced civilization would say, well, that's in their nature right now, but they can develop. So they're not going to be looking at us particularly like that unless we were an actual threat, which we're not going to be at this point anyway. But like, you don't look down at a snake and you know it's dangerous, but you don't decide I'm just going to kill it because it's dangerous, or or make a conclusion like that. You say that's its nature, and maybe one day snakes won't be so dangerous, and some of them aren't as dangerous. But there's ways of looking at everything. So I think it's just very naive for people to make assumptions, and Stephen Hawkings to make an assumption that making contact with an extraterrestrial life form or race might actually be a threat to humanity. I don't think so. I think suggesting things like that is a threat to humanity. And finally, for a change, I want to do something different. And today I'm going to do the top 3 conspiracies debunked instead of factual stuff debunked, which makes a change. First of all, I want to say number 1 is Roswell. I don't believe it was the site of an alien crash. It doesn't make sense. Once again, if it doesn't make sense, why are we really discussing it and making up possibilities? Roswell, imagine if an alien spaceship came and literally travelled across space through all sorts of debris and all sorts of dangerous cosmic occurrences, came to Earth and then crashes in our simple, straightforward enough atmosphere, I would imagine. Also, it doesn't make sense if they're looking to evade being caught because they've not ever been so obvious, or they've not declared they're being here. So they clearly don't want to be found out. So obviously then if there was a crash, which there won't, because it doesn't make sense that such an advanced ship would crash without having 1,000,001 different options before crash. But if it did, that it would certainly have something along the lines of an auto-destruct, that it would completely evaporate or be destroyed on impact also. So that doesn't make sense. So Roswell didn't happen, but it's great for the people and good for tourism. So number 2 for today is the moon landing. And despite all the people who are saying that America didn't land on the moon, I totally disagree with you. America did land on the moon. And again, I'm dealing with logic, because if they hadn't have landed on the moon, then Russia would have debunked this a long, long time ago. Not back even at the time, but between now and then even, because Russia's hardly America's best friend, even though they're getting unreasonable. But they'd certainly debunk it if they had proof, and they would have proof if it didn't happen. So number 3 for today is Nibiru and Planet X, and this is the most crazy fiction I've ever heard in my life. It's not coming. The reason it's not coming is because it's always coming. At every event in humanity, every year, at every cosmic thing, at every psychic's will for something to happen on this date or that date, it's always Planet X or Nibiru, and it doesn't come, and it doesn't come because it's not coming and because it's fiction. And I think that people are looking for, again, as I've said before, doom and salvation from the sky. And instead of looking for doom and salvation from the sky, or instead of hoping almost for something exciting to happen like Nibiru or Planet X to come your way, why don't we just all start dealing with logic and deal with fact? And instead of becoming conspirators, why don't we become scientists? That's it for today. Thank you.